The story opens with a troubling question. What if someone could influence and control others through saliva? Then it presses even further, asking whether that power would become love or collapse into selfish obsession. A voice on the phone calls out to Kazumichi from outside the house. The caller rattles off worried questions about food, homework, sleep, gaming, and whether he is truly ready for school. Kazumichi snaps that he is fine already and insists he is fully prepared for high school. His mother says she will be in Japan starting next year, tells him to manage on his own, and he hurriedly says he understands because he is already late. After the call ends, he admits to himself that he has handled almost nothing, and his messy room quietly gives him away. At the same time, a girl heads toward the neighboring house with clear purpose. She sharply orders Suzu to bring food to a neglected boy, explaining that the Inishi family went overseas on business and left Kazumichi alone for the month. Realizing the front door is not even locked, Suzu decides to go in despite her annoyance. The instant Suzu steps inside, Kazumichi strikes a ridiculous pose and loudly acts out some overblown attack, proving he is treating none of this seriously. Suzu right away slams him for the stunt, and the grin vanishes from his face. She demands to know what he thinks he is doing, already worn out by him. Kazumichi hurriedly apologizes, and the situation reaches a point neither of them expected. Suzu points at him and says he has not changed since elementary school, making it painfully clear she remembers exactly what kind of boy he is. She firmly hands him the papers and says their mother sent an information sheet, leaving him no room to dodge it. As he looks at the notice, Suzu points out that it is a warning about a suspicious stranger lurking around the school area. She scolds him for leaving the front door wide open and bluntly reminds him that the world is dangerous, especially for someone that careless. Kazumichi tries to brush it off by saying someone as small and weak as Suzu seems more at risk, but she clearly does not take that well. The situation shifts into territory no one prepared for. Kazumichi casually says, living alone means he could invite girls over whenever he wants, but the idea sounds reckless the moment it leaves his mouth. Suzu fiercely shuts that nonsense down and tells him his thinking is completely wrong. A girl all of a sudden approaches and says she wants to love the person meant for her for the rest of her life, while also calling Kazumichi the same dreamer as always. Kazumichi panics and insists it is not a dream because he has already found his ideal girl, leaving Suzu caught off guard behind him. The girl brightly greets Inishi-kun and Tomura-kun, instantly taking over the moment with her cheerful smile. Kazumichi and his friend freeze as she steps closer, and the sudden attention throws Kazumichi completely off balance. She warmly says good morning and mentions how nice the weather is, while Kazumichi can barely force out a reply through his nerves. Kazumichi awkwardly answers back, still flustered as she walks on with another friendly good morning. Even after she passes, her cheerful farewell lingers, and Kazumichi just stands there stunned while his friend stares in disbelief. Kazumichi trembles with excitement over getting to speak to her again, and his friend is shocked that he actually pulled it off. Suzu asks if Yumasaki-san is really Kazumichi's ideal girl, pointing out that she is rich, beautiful, and wildly popular. Kazumichi nervously throws the question back at Suzu and bluntly asks if she likes Karen. Karen all of a sudden appears and answers at once, catching Kazumichi completely unprepared. Ignoring Kazumichi's protest, Suzu calmly asks Karen what she thinks of Enishi. Karen repeats the question under her breath, clearly giving Enishi-kun real thought. Kazumichi waits in total panic, and the moment takes an uncomfortable turn. Karen sweetly says, Inishi-kun is small, sincere, kind, and even a little cute, and the room falls into stunned silence. Suzu right away cuts the praise down by saying Kazumichi is just immature, and the comment lands hard. As she walks away, Suzu tells him to stop dreaming about someone who is not interested in him, leaving him hurt enough to call her cruel. Even so, Kazumichi clings to hope and convinces himself that Yumasaki-san's usual kindness means he has finally found the girl of his dreams. Suzu harshly says that even her mother divorced, remarried while she was still in elementary school, and left to live abroad with her new family, proving how much her old gentleness has changed. Kazumichi can only mutter in shaken awe that women are truly terrifying. Still unsettled, he heads toward Class 1B and wonders if she is there. As he imagines the kind of girl he wants, he guiltily admits that wishing for someone cheerful and kind who would care only about him is probably selfish. A sudden sound from the school building snaps him out a bit. He arrives carrying leftovers from Suzu-chan's house, clearly with some purpose in mind. He hesitates because if he eats them in front of everyone, Suzu will scold him again, while a girl nearby complains that eating there is embarrassing. His attention locks onto the beautiful girl in front of him, and the sight overwhelms him instantly. He happily finds the pond area empty and thinks his luck has finally turned, since couples are usually all over that spot. He prepares the food he brought, laying the meal out as he moves ahead with his plan. Kazumichi is startled when a shadowy girl all of a sudden appears behind the fence and calls out to him in a panicked voice. Her suspicious appearance makes him freeze, and he instantly remembers the rumor about a dangerous, shady person. As he backs away in alarm, the girl recognizes him as Inishi Kazumichi, making him realize the stranger somehow knows his name. Kazumichi nervously admits she has found the right person, though he is still too shaken to understand what is happening. The girl lowers her voice and desperately asks him for help, shifting the moment from fear into tense confusion. Kazumichi frantically searches his memory for where they might know each other from, but every guess only deepens the mystery. When he asks whether she remembers him, she reacts blankly, and his hope of clearing things up collapses on the spot. The girl quietly says she understands, but the way she lowers her face makes the air feel even heavier. Before Kazumichi can process any of it, she all of a sudden climbs through and grabs onto him, leaving him completely stunned. As Kazumichi panics over why Suzu-chan is there, he sees her up close and realizes the mysterious girl is actually Suzu-chan in disguise. Suzu-chan urgently pulls Kazumichi down and warns him to hide because he is supposedly being targeted, leaving him even more confused by her act. Kazumichi stares at Suzu-chan in disbelief and asks what is going on, still unable to follow her strange behavior. As Kazumichi moves toward her, he asks why she brought leftovers to school and warns that it would be embarrassing if someone saw her there, while Suzu-chan bluntly asks if that was really all he came to say. Suzu-chan snaps at him like an overprotective wife, scolding him to lock the door, check the stove, and watch out for suspicious people nearby, and he is overwhelmed on the spot. When Suzu-chan says she is thirsty and reaches for his drink, Kazumichi panics because sharing it feels far too awkward to him. Suzu-chan then coldly asks whether he really thinks she sees him as a man, and the blunt dismissal rattles him instantly. She takes a sip anyway, and the silence that follows turns strangely heavy. Even though it is only ordinary juice, Suzu-chan becomes flustered and admits she feels strange, leaving her shaken by her own reaction. Kazumichi flushes hard and desperately tells her to go back quickly, clearly unable to handle the tension anymore. With her face tense, Suzu-chan tearfully starts to confess that what she wants is Kazuki, pushing the scene into a sudden emotional turn. Suzu-chan abruptly throws herself onto Kazuki and clings to him while urgently calling for him, leaving him stunned. In a dazed voice, Suzu-chan says she needs Kazuki, and he panics and asks why she is saying something so alarming. Kazuki right away senses something is wrong and demands to know what happened to her, refusing to believe she is acting normally. Even while holding on to him, Suzu-chan keeps repeating that she needs Kazuki, and his confusion only deepens. To prove how serious she is, Suzu-chan starts tugging at part of her outer clothing, making the moment far more alarming. Looking down at him with watery eyes, Suzu-chan insists that they are not little kids anymore, pressing the weight of it onto him. Kazuki freezes in total shock, his face draining as he struggles to process what she is doing. Suzu-chan collapses against him and admits she first thought he was only teasing her, but now she believes he has gone too far. As she leans in close, Kazuki realizes, with rising panic, that something is clearly wrong with her state of mind. Kazuki grabs her and stops her, shouting that something is wrong with Suzu-chan and refusing to let it continue. Suzu-chan, flushed and glassy-eyed, admits she has realized just how important Kazuki really is. Still pinning him in place, Suzu-chan says she is going to force him to face the situation, driving him into even deeper alarm. She leans over him with a blank but determined stare, while Kazuki can only freeze under the pressure. Kazuki panics that he might not be able to push her away, yet he keeps telling himself that what Suzu-chan is doing is not right. Before the situation can go any further, a hooded figure all of a sudden grabs Suzu-chan and yanks her away from Kazuki. The stranger seizes Kazuki by the collar, and Kazuki instantly recognizes the person as the same suspicious guy from before. The hooded figure abruptly forces something into Kazuki's mouth, leaving him too shocked to resist. Kazuki's eyes go wide as confusion and fear hit him at once. From even a short distance, the whole scene turns chaotic, and Kazuki can only wonder in panic what is happening anymore. As the figure grips his face, Kazuki realizes in horror that the stranger has transferred saliva into his mouth. The hooded stranger tells Kazuki that Suzu-chan has been affected by his poison and that his saliva has now become the cure. The stranger restrains Kazuki and urgently orders him to give that cure to her. Kazuki stares in shock as he realizes the stranger is telling him to give Suzu-chan his saliva. Suzu-chan reaches out to Kazuki and calls for him with desperate urgency. Pulled by the moment, Kazuki and Suzu-chan are forced into close contact as he delivers the supposed cure. As their faces remain close, Kazuki is overwhelmed by how tense and unreal the moment feels. While supporting Suzu-chan, Kazuki is stunned that she seems to be relying on him this much, even as he admits to himself that his feelings for Yamasaki-san still remain. The intensity of the contact makes Kazuki realize he is being dragged into all kinds of confusing emotions. All of a sudden, Suzu-chan jerks back with a scream, her whole body reacting as if something has abruptly changed. Kazuki pulls away in alarm and demands to know what was done to him, while Suzu-chan can only stare back in confusion. Suzu-chan jerks back in anger, insisting none of this was ever her choice. She runs off and rejects Kazuki outright, leaving him on the ground beneath the hooded stranger's silent gaze. The stranger quietly notes that the spell seems to have broken, and Kazuki calls after Suzu-chan as she keeps walking away. The stranger asks whether Kazuki and Suzu-chan drank from the same bottle, and he right away demands to know why that matters. The hooded figure reveals that Kazuki's saliva acts like poison to the opposite unsafe contact, and the rare condition now awakening leaves him stunned. The stranger explains that this is Kazuki's enchantment condition, and that his saliva can place any girl under its control. Kazuki recoils in disbelief and demands to know what this so-called enchantment condition even is. As the words sink in, Kazuki realizes it may be the same bizarre condition he once heard about in the news. The stranger explains that if alluring saliva is mixed with another kind of poison saliva, the effect can be neutralized and turned into medicine, while Kazuki panics that his normal life may already be over. The hooded stranger then admits that she carries the same condition as Kazuki, making her even more unsettling. Kazuki panics and asks what they are supposed to do now, then fearfully wonders if neutralizing it means he can never live normally again. The hooded stranger warns that if Kazuki fails to exchange saliva regularly after the condition awakens, the condition's effects will only get worse. She bluntly tells him that, in the worst case, he could even die, and the threat leaves him frozen. Kazuki spirals, insisting that he does not want to die, but he also does not want to spend his life exchanging saliva with random girls. When he nervously blurts out "boys too," the hooded stranger instantly catches that part and presses him on it. She answers at once and says that she is a girl, dropping the disguise and deepening Kazuki's confusion. Kazuki recoils in pure embarrassment at the reveal and shouts in disbelief, demanding to know who she really is. The scene then shifts to a city building, hinting that the truth behind this condition runs much deeper. A narration explains that this condition appears during puberty and allows a person to control another's senses through saliva, while many suspicious cases of sudden success and influence may have been tied to it. As an example, the narration describes a hospitalized man who was reportedly being supported by 5 women at once, showing how dangerous the condition can become. The explanation continues as the woman says her organization is also hunting people with this condition. She adds that they intend to eliminate those people before that power is abused. The mysterious girl appears after bathing, now without her disguise, and the entire room feels different. Kazuki hears her drying her hair in the bathroom and becomes even more aware that she is inside his house. He paces around the room, unable to settle while she remains there. Kazuki thinks back on how shaken he had been all day, unable to focus in class before finally giving up and coming home early. Since the mysterious girl said she had not lived a normal life in a long time, Kazuki decides to let her stay at his place for now. Even after making that choice, he can barely process the fact that there is a girl inside his house. When she all of a sudden calls him Kazumichi, Kazuki jolts and blurts out a response in flustered panic. She calmly thanks him for the clothes and for letting her use the bath, which only makes him more self-conscious. Kazuki turns around in panic and hesitantly admits that he is not even sure what to say. The girl says the oversized shirt fits perfectly, while Kazuki realizes she ended up wearing the biggest shirt he owns. Kazuki tells her to eat whatever she likes and quietly sets food out for her. As she eats quickly, Kazuki realizes she must have been starving. Still flustered, Kazuki awkwardly asks for her name again. The girl introduces herself as Himekawa Ichigo. Sitting across from him, she tells Kazumichi that it has been a long time. She says she never expected Kazuki to have the same condition, and adds that seeing him again feels like a miracle. Kazuki forces an uneasy smile and admits that he honestly cannot remember her. He tells himself that only a few girls have ever stayed in his memory, and the emotional pressure reaches a breaking point. Kazuki nervously asks Himekawa Ichigo where they met, suspecting she may have mistaken him for someone else. Ichigo stares at him and asks why he had been searching for her, adding that she thought he had the same condition. Right in the middle of that tense exchange, Ichigo all of a sudden falls asleep. Kazuki panics and tries to wake her, telling her she should at least sleep on the couch. As he looks at her collapsed figure, he realizes she must have been completely exhausted. When he picks her up, her frail state only makes him more flustered. Holding the sleeping girl, Kazuki admits to himself that he first mistook her for a boy, but now he sees how vulnerable she is, and the memory of their earlier contact leaves him shaken. He instantly crushes that dangerous thought by reminding himself that he loves Yumasaki-san. Kazuki then remembers the warning that someone with this condition could die if they did not regularly exchange saliva with others. Looking at the sleeping Ichigo, he realizes she likely has the same condition, and if she is still alive, then she must have been relying on other men to survive. As Kazuki watches the sleeping Ichigo on his couch, he uneasily concludes that she can only be surviving by depending on other men. The next morning, Ichigo calmly greets Kazuki, catching him off guard the instant he wakes up. Ichigo moves in close and tells him they should do their usual morning neutralization before the day begins, leaving him frozen. Kazuki panics inside as he realizes he still cannot stay calm when she gets that close. He wonders if her control comes from experience, imagining that Ichigo has already learned to handle that dangerous condition far better than he has. Kazuki pulls back and firmly tells Ichigo that he cannot do that with someone he does not even like. Ichigo quietly stares at him while Kazuki abruptly turns away and heads out, leaving a cold silence behind. Unable to face that tension, Kazuki rushes out of the room and flees the house. Outside, a woman stops him, says he looks unwell, and tells him there is no problem because she had been nearby. As she deals with a broken panel, the woman notices the damage and apologizes, saying she had not been careful. Kazuki notices a report saying a suspicious person had been seen wandering around the school. He instantly connects it to Ichigo and fears that someone with her dangerous condition has gone looking for a wealthy target, only to remember that she came searching for someone like him. Realizing how shaken she had seemed, Kazuki regrets how coldly he treated her and feels he should have apologized more gently. Then another fear hits him, and he wonders whether it was safe to leave a complete stranger alone in his house. Kazuki abruptly decides to go home at once, unable to shake the growing unease. The moment he returns, he sees the room is empty and realizes Ichigo is gone. Dropping to the floor in shock, Kazuki wonders if Ichigo went to his school to look for him. He rushes outside and desperately calls out for Himakawa-san. The suspicious figure turns around, and it is a girl in a dark cap and coat. As she starts to leave, Kazuki stops her and asks for a moment to talk. The officer says there had been a report about a suspicious person wandering around and asks whether she has any identification. The girl stays silent as the officers question her beside the patrol car. When she tries to run, an officer stops her and presses her for her age and where her parents are. Nearby, Kazuki is startled by the scene and realizes she is terrified of men. Shaken and sweating, the girl pleads to be let go. Kazuki rushes in, takes control of the situation, and declares that she is with him. He explains that she had been searching the whole school for him because she needed his help, and that they had only just managed to reunite. The officer looks confused, and the scene shifts into uncomfortable territory. Kazuki quickly claims that she is his little sister, and that they had been separated while she was living far away with his father. He then calls it a miraculous reunion, says he will take her home after finding her, and begs the officer not to inform his parents. Once the officers leave satisfied, Kazuki admits that his story was a lie and that he does not actually have a little sister. He apologizes for lying and asks the girl if she had really been searching for him this whole time. The girl finally confesses that she is deeply afraid of other men. She then tells Kazuki that he is the only one she can rely on for what she needs. That answer hits Kazuki hard, and he freezes in confusion. Seeing him reel, the girl worriedly asks if he is all right. She explains that she followed him because, without regular saliva from him, the effect would keep building until it caused a mental collapse, especially now that his condition had awakened. Kazuki breaks down in panic as he realizes he cannot do what is required with someone he does not love. The girl all of a sudden closes the distance and declares that she will make Kazuki fall in love with her instead. Before Kazuki can recover, she corners him and forces a deeply uncomfortable exchange that leaves him stunned and overwhelmed. A silence between them turns impossible to escape. That moment leaves both of them visibly shaken. The weight of that moment refuses to lift. Nothing is resolved, and the pressure only grows. The tense pause stretches on without undoing what just happened. The air stays charged while neither of them says a word. The scene remains frozen in raw unease. The silence between them presses down even harder. The moment drags forward beneath a cloud of quiet tension, and the tension keeps pulling them toward whatever comes next. The girl handed Kazuki the house key and said she was leaving for school, and the sudden normalcy caught him completely off guard. When Kazuki took it, she thanked him with a small smile, and for one fragile second the tension between them loosened. Kazuki froze as the smile sank in, stunned that something so simple could shake him that badly. As they separated at the crosswalk, Kazuki kept watching her back while the strange encounter looped through his mind. He uneasily wondered if Himakawa saying she needed help with that strange treatment meant she had gone through something like that before, and the thought only unsettled him more. Then guilt crept in, because he still could not remember anything important about her, and that regret would not leave him alone. A sudden shift from a nearby van made him stop cold, and his eyes snapped toward it. A pale-haired boy leaned out and asked if Kazuki knew Himakawa Ichigo, then introduced himself as Inishi Kazumichi-kun. The boy all of a sudden climbed out toward him, and the abrupt move made Kazuki recoil on instinct. Kazuki panicked and demanded to know who he was and how he knew his name. Anishi Kazumichi said he was searching for his adorable little sister and asked Kazuki if he had seen her. Hearing that, Kazuki jerked in shock and blurted out that she was his sister. Anishi Kazumichi repeated that he was looking for his cute and lovable younger sister, pressing the point with eerie calm. He leaned in and asked again, directly, whether Kazuki had seen her. Kazuki felt his stomach drop as he realized this might be Himekawa Ichigo's brother. When Kazuki said he did not know, Anishi Kazumichi all of a sudden stepped even closer, and the pressure forced Kazuki back. Anishi Kazumichi then asked whether Kazuki was under her influence, and Kazuki tensed all over. Kazuki hurriedly insisted he was not, and Anishi Kazumichi handed him his contact information and told him to call if his sister appeared. The sheer intensity of his presence terrified Kazuki, and he fled at once because staying there felt impossible. The encounter ended with Kazuki heading back toward school, still rattled by what he had just learned. Kazuki moved through the hallway trying to avoid walking into class late and drawing every eye to himself. Anishi all of a sudden appeared beside him again, and the shock tore a yelp out of Kazuki. Anishi sternly told Kazuki that leaving early the day before and arriving late again today was unacceptable, then dragged him to the staff room to explain himself. Inside the classroom, Shizuno Mizushima noticed the disturbance and quietly turned to look back at him. By the time Kazuki got home, he was thinking about how he had wanted to talk to Suzu-chan about yesterday, but the lecture had dragged on too long. The instant he stepped inside, Himekawa Ichigo greeted him warmly, and the casual welcome stunned him. Kazuki was shocked to see the room completely clean, and Ichigo explained that she had only tidied the living room and the water area. The smell of food and the warmth of the room hit Kazuki all at once, and the domestic atmosphere embarrassed him more than he could handle. That sudden emotional blow twisted into physical pain, and Kazuki doubled over with a groan. Kazuki realized the condition was flaring up again even though he had suppressed it that morning, and the pain shaking through him made it worse. Himekawa Ichigo explained that when the condition was still new, the time limit before they had to stabilize it again was much shorter. As Kazuki lay there in pain, Ichigo added that for a while they would need to stabilize it about every half day. Ichigo leaned close and steadied Kazuki while he stared up at her, tense and unable to hide his discomfort. Just then, a voice from the entrance called out to Anishi-kun and asked for a minute to talk. Shizuno Mizushima stepped in and said she wanted to discuss what had happened yesterday. Then she saw Ichigo supporting Kazuki on the sofa, and she froze where she stood. The room turned painfully awkward as Ichigo stayed close to Kazuki while Shizuno stared in open shock. Kazuki recognized her right away and blurted out Suzu-chan's name in alarm. Shizuno's face flushed with confusion as she demanded to know what was going on there. Ichigo instantly realized this was the same girl whose strange fixation had erupted the day before, and the tension sharpened. Shizuno demanded to know who Ichigo was, and Ichigo quickly claimed this was part of Kazuki's treatment and insisted she had no choice. Kazuki nervously admitted that he did not remember Ichigo, but said something had happened recently that made her come looking for him. Shizuno right away warned that Ichigo was obviously deceiving him, while Kazuki argued that he still had not heard her full story. Kazuki awkwardly confessed that he had pretended not to remember Ichigo because he thought the truth would hurt her feelings. Ichigo shut that down at once and told him that was not kindness, only a shallow habit of saying what girls wanted to hear when they seemed upset. While the tension hung there, Ichigo set down drinks and told them to help themselves, leaving Shizuno baffled that she was serving tea at a time like this. Ichigo calmly said she would explain why she was there, then revealed that she and Kazuki shared the same dangerous condition. She explained that people with this condition had to regularly undergo a stabilizing exchange with someone affected in the opposite way or fall under a stronger influence, and that combining her treatment with Kazuki's could cancel the effect and let them live normally. Shizuno reacted with sharp suspicion and asked whether any of that was even true or just a trick to manipulate them. Ichigo leaned in and answered that if Shizuno still doubted her, she was ready to prove it. Ichigo coolly told Shizuno to see the proof with her own eyes. Shizuno hesitated, sweating as she insisted she was not going to be fooled. Even as she resisted, Shizuno's body betrayed the pull of the condition, and she angrily realized she was being dragged into the same trap again. A sudden flashback struck Kazuki as he remembered Suzu-chan rushing at him under that same unnatural influence. Shizuno went rigid with dread as she realized her fear was becoming real. Overcome by the urge, Shizuno clung to Kazuki and desperately begged him to help her calm it down. Kazuki panicked as Shizuno admitted she was getting worse and needed the condition neutralized quickly. Kazuki urgently asked whether passing the neutralizing effect to Suzu-chan afterward could cure her too, and Ichigo confirmed that it could. Kazuki was about to act on that answer, but all of a sudden stopped himself and told them to wait. Ichigo explained that people affected by the condition lost control and obeyed those carrying it because they became desperate for relief. Ichigo explained that if girls like her were exposed to the world, people would see them as dangerous and turn everything into a scandal. She added that some affected girls still lived ordinary lives only because they forced anyone they influenced to stay silent. Kazuki was shaken and wondered if something like that could really happen. Ichigo answered that if the condition never faded, then it absolutely could. She warned that as long as Shizuno remained affected, she would do anything to get relief from Kazuki. Ichigo explained that if Kazuki cured Shizuno indirectly, she could keep her will, but if he did it directly, she would fall completely under the influence. While Kazuki panicked, Ichigo coldly said the safest choice was to keep Shizuno under the influence so she would stay quiet, then demanded his answer. Ichigo confronted Kazuki and asked if he really intended to keep trying to save Susu-chan even if it risked affecting her too. She revealed that her true motive was making sure Shizuno would never tell anyone about their dangerous condition. Kazuki realized Ichigo had suffered so much that she no longer knew how to trust anyone, but he still could not accept her conclusion. Kazuki admitted that Susu-chan had already fallen under his influence once, yet she still came back to hear him out. He told Himakawa Ichigo that Suzu-chan was someone he truly trusted, and that was why he wanted her help to bring Suzu-chan back to normal. Determined to prove it, Kazuki moved closer and carried out the indirect cure himself. He completed the stabilizing exchange with Himakawa Ichigo, forcing himself through the tension to finish the treatment. Afterward, Kazuki felt an unexpected sense of relief, and it slipped out before he could stop it. Himakawa Ichigo quietly said that if Kazumichi believed in it, then she would trust him too. Kazuki panicked and worried he had overdone the treatment, then right away apologized. Ichigo shyly explained that nothing was wrong and that she had only gotten a little embarrassed. That answer left Kazuki completely flustered and unable to respond. Then Kazuki refocused on healing Suzu-chan, while a girl nearby reacted in stunned excitement. Kazuki and Himakawa Ichigo froze inches apart, and the charged silence made them both painfully aware of each other. As Ichigo hovered over him, Kazuki tried to remind himself this was supposed to calm her condition, but his nerves only tightened. Even overwhelmed, Kazuki forced himself to focus on saving Suzu-chan and refused to leave her trapped under the condition. Kazuki moved too, all of a sudden, and Ichigo stiffened in shock as he tried to continue the treatment. Ichigo recoiled at once and demanded to know what he was doing, while Kazuki yelped after being struck in the confusion. Ichigo blurted out that the condition was real and dangerously serious, and Kazuki insisted that was exactly why he thought working with her could stop another disaster. Panicking, Kazuki admitted his condition had started showing the day before, and begged Ichigo to keep it secret, since only Suzu-chan knew. Kazuki apologized for making things even harder for her, and said he had never meant to cause more trouble. Ichigo, still upset, muttered that she had no intention of telling anyone, then bitterly asked why he always acted like this. When Kazuki tried to show concern, Ichigo snapped that if he really cared, he should at least look honestly sad or angry instead of reacting so awkwardly. Ichigo revealed that she had stayed by Kazuki's side because he had promised she could, and reminded him that while he was in the hospital, his mother divorced, remarried, and left the country without him. Fighting back tears, Ichigo blamed herself for the accident and confessed that Kazuki had been hurt because of her. Kazuki stood stunned as the memory pulled him back to the hospital where it all began. In that memory, a younger Kazuki anxiously asked his mother what would happen if her surgery the next day failed, and she coldly replied that it was a safe procedure. Ichigo remembered forgetting to hand Kazuki's mother her charm, and Kazuki right away said he would take it to her himself. Kazuki ran off in a hurry, while Ichigo called after him to watch the traffic light. But before he could stop, Kazuki rushed into danger and was struck by an oncoming vehicle. Back in the present, Ichigo quietly explained that the accident was why Kazuki had been hospitalized for an entire year. Overcome with guilt, Ichigo said she believed it was her fault that Kazuki still seemed more childish than most people his age. With tears in her eyes, Ichigo admitted that this was why she felt she had to help Kazuki grow up. Kazuki realized Ichigo had never blamed Shizuno Mizushima for the accident, and after all those tears, she had still forced herself back to her feet. Kazuki pulled Ichigo into a steadying hug and told her that this time she was the one hurting, making it clear her pain mattered more to him than his own confusion. Flustered, Kazuki awkwardly admitted that what happened earlier had not really bothered him, trying to ease the tension even as embarrassment rose on his face. Ichigo quietly said that if this condition was troubling Kazuki now, then she had a reason for what she was about to do. Ichigo told Kazuki she would keep it secret and help him through it, and that quiet promise left him speechless. When another girl appeared, Ichigo right away introduced herself as Himakawa Ichigo, while Kazuki hovered behind her, visibly tense. Ichigo bluntly declared that she and Kasumichi helped Kazuki manage his symptoms twice a day and even lived together, leaving the other girl stunned by how direct she was. Kazuki was shaken as he realized Ichigo had never truly been angry over his childish behavior and had been worrying about him the whole time. Then, one tiny detail about Ichigo drew attention, and the focus shifted to a card identifying her as Himekawa Raimu, hinting that something was being hidden. The scene shifted to Yumasaki Hospital, dragging the truth back to the place tied to Ichigo's past. A doctor explained that part of the facility would be reserved exclusively for people with unusual conditions. He added that, although some had started questioning why so much support was being given to outsiders, his family had run this business for generations. The older man then proposed bringing Kazuki fully into the family by having him marry his 16-year-old granddaughter. Kazuki called it an incredibly generous offer, but the hesitation in his voice was impossible to hide. He said firmly that, at the very least, he would not even consider it until after high school. The old man accepted that answer and placed his trust in his future fiancée, while a development plan dated May 11 hinted that far more was already moving behind the scenes. The memory shifted to a young girl at a piano, suggesting the truth stretched back to someone from Kazuki's past. Then a card came into view, and the name Himekawa Raimu stood out like a warning. Ichigo and Akeno Aikawa stared at the card in disbelief, while Kazuki froze as they realized it was her brother's business card. Akeno Aikawa urgently demanded to know where Kazumichi had gotten it, and he could only answer with shaken uncertainty. Kazuki explained that a man claiming to be Ichigo's brother had asked whether he knew her, but since he did not recognize him, he stayed silent. Ichigo went pale as she realized the man they meant really was her brother. As Ichigo grabbed Kazuki in alarm, Akeno Aikawa bluntly asked whether the siblings were not on good terms. Ichigo revealed that ever since her condition awakened, her brother had been investigating everything about her. Kazuki wondered if her brother had been searching for a cure, but Ichigo said no and admitted he seemed to be chasing something much bigger. Akeno Aikawa grimly suggested that he might have wanted to use that condition for something dangerous. Ichigo said returning to him would only put another person with the same condition in danger, which was why she refused to go back. Fighting back tears, Ichigo confessed that more than anything, she was exhausted from being constantly tested and pressured. Ichigo then worried that if people had been tracking her, Kazumichi might get dragged into it too. Kazuki right away reassured her that as long as they stayed at his place, they would be safe. Kazuki insisted that if they stayed together, they could avoid danger, and Akeno Aikawa added that his weird luck usually cancelled out his bad luck. Ichigo fell quiet, still embarrassed and shaken, but his promise seemed to ease some of her fear. Akeno Aikawa all of a sudden grabbed Kazuki and pulled him along as she decided it was time to leave. As she headed out, Akeno Aikawa said her mother had called her for dinner, told them to run next door if anything happened, and scolded Kazuki for keeping the girl alone at his house so late. After Akeno Aikawa was gone, Kazuki awkwardly suggested that he and Ichigo should eat dinner too. He set out a simple homemade meal for the two of them. Silence settled over the table, and Kazuki worried that Ichigo was still shaken by everything that had happened. Not knowing how to handle her mood, Kazuki panicked inside and wondered whether light conversation or a small treat might lift her spirits. Instead, Ichigo all of a sudden praised the meal with overflowing enthusiasm, saying it was delicious and that homemade food made her genuinely happy. Then the next day arrived. Kazumichi announced that he was leaving school early and heading to the hospital before going straight home. When asked if it was related to his condition, Kazumichi quickly insisted it was only a routine checkup he had been doing since the accident years ago, and begged her not to tell anyone. As Kazumichi prepared to leave, Ichigo stopped him and reminded him that he had forgotten something. Ichigo all of a sudden stepped closer and sent him off with a brief show of encouragement that left him completely stunned. With a faint blush, Ichigo calmly wished him a great day. The instant the tension broke, Kazumichi collapsed to the floor while Ichigo stared in surprise at how hard it hit him. As he walked away afterward, Kazumichi marveled at how fast Himekawa-san had recovered and regained her composure. Fired up by that thought, Kazumichi swore he wanted to become more confident and cool too. At school, a black-haired girl warmly greeted Anishi-kun with a bright good morning. Flustered, he returned the greeting, and she right away pointed out that he had been arriving late or leaving early a lot lately and asked if he was alright. When the girl asked if he was alright, Anishi Kazumichi hurriedly insisted he was fine and said he was only leaving early for another normal checkup. Relieved, she said she had been worried and asked him to tell her if anything was ever wrong. Later in class, Kazumichi thought about how he had spoken to Yumasaki-san again and how kind and sweet she was. He told himself she was the perfect girl, that he liked her, and that even seeing her from afar made him happy despite the distance between them. As Yumasaki-san absent-mindedly held her pencil near her face, Kazumichi found himself staring. His thoughts spiraled as he fixated on how cute she looked and became increasingly distracted. Then he caught himself wondering whether being close to the person he liked would feel completely different from being close to anyone else. Shocked by his own thoughts, Kazumichi mentally scolded himself until a classmate snapped at Anishi to be quiet. After school, Kazumichi headed to Yumasaki Hospital while his classmates called out to him as he left. At the hospital, the elderly doctor told Kazumichi that his health was perfectly fine and that he should return again in 3 months. Leaving the hospital, Anishi Kazumichi bitterly thought that spending 2 hours and 5,000 yen just to hear he was fine was getting harder to endure every time. Then he all of a sudden spotted Yumasaki-san with a blonde man, and the sight stopped him cold. As he looked closer, Kazumichi realized the man was also Himekawa Ichigo's brother, which only deepened the confusion. Hidden nearby, Kazumichi watched them stand unusually close while the man calmly told Yumasaki-san that she must have been surprised when he all of a sudden called her his fiancée. Yumasaki-san admitted she had been surprised, but because it was Raimu-san, someone she had known for years, she felt calm and happy, and he seemed pleased to hear that. Raimu-san leaned in with practiced familiarity and declared that if he was going to have such a cute wife, he needed to make her the happiest girl in the world. Crushed by the scene in front of him, Kazumichi listened as Raimu-san told Yumasaki-san to be careful on her way home. While hiding in the bushes, Kazumichi felt his heart sinking and wondered if he was really about to lose the love he had held on to. A woman nearby cheerfully remarked that Raimu-sama truly had an adorable fiancé. Raimu-san coldly reflected that pretending she was naive made everything easier, because then he could control her just as he had controlled his girlfriend and his sister. In Kazumichi's imagination, Raimu-san told Yumasaki-san that if he had to choose someone beside him, he wanted someone clever and charming like her. Kazumichi burst out of the bushes in outrage and furiously called Raimu-san a bastard. As his emotions overflowed, Kazumichi swore that he would protect both Himekawa-san and Yumasaki-san no matter what. He then imagined Yumasaki-san as a sorrowful bride, sitting alone in front of a church as if trapped in a miserable future. In that vision, a message from Himekawa Raimu revealed that he had been with someone else the day before, then dismissed it as a wrong chat. The imagined Yumasaki-san broke down, lamenting that her fiancé kept betraying her and that she was being forced into a loveless engagement for her family's sake. Fired up by that fantasy, Kazumichi declared that he was the only one who truly loved Yumasaki-san. In his delusion, Yumasaki-san turned to him in tears and said that Anishi-kun was her real love. Kazumichi imagined rescuing her from the engagement as she clung to him, while Raimu-san was left regretting his own betrayal. Then the fantasy shattered, and Kazumichi woke up in bed to the sound of his phone, groggily realizing morning had already come. Suzu explained that on her way home from the hospital yesterday, she overheard that Himekawa's brother and Yumasaki were engaged, and soon after she saw him with another woman. She said the shock made her feel sick, and after barely making it home, she collapsed. Himekawa Ichigo arrived carrying supplies and urged Suzu to take them. Ichigo explained that the clothes were new and chosen to suit Suzu, and added that if Suzu needed anything, she could ask her instead of Inishi. Touched by the kindness, Suzu quietly told Ichigo that she was very sweet. Ichigo flushed with emotion, but still insisted that she did not want Suzu to accept those things. Anishi Kazumichi all of a sudden jumped in and declared that they should crush Himekawa's brother's ambitions. While Kazumichi ranted that Raimu was trash who chased wealth and status, betrayed his fiancé, and made his own sister suffer, Suzu only looked confused, and Ichigo told them dinner was ready. At the table, Kazumichi kept eating in tense silence, while Suzu watched him closely. From the other room, Ichigo listened in shock as Suzu realized that Karen's fiancé was Ichigo's brother. Himekawa Ichigo explained that her brother's real goal was to advance research on her condition, which was why he had been cooperating with Yumasaki Hospital for so long. Ichigo added that she had also stayed at that hospital for a while. Kazumichi was startled and realized that he and Himekawa Ichigo might have met at Yumasaki Hospital before. As the thought settled in, Kazumichi admitted to himself that so much time had passed that he had forgotten many things from back then. He then refocused and decided that to stop Yumasaki-san from marrying that man, and to let Ichigo live freely, he had to act. Fired up, Kazumichi declared that there was no choice but to expose Ichigo's brother's wrongdoing, while Ichigo silently felt he had rushed to that conclusion without thinking it through. Ichigo noticed that Kazumichi still had not given up on Karen, and decided that for now she would ask Karen what she thought about Ichigo's brother too. With that plan set, Ichigo headed for the door while Kazumichi followed behind her. Ichigo called Kazumichi's name and all of a sudden asked whether he preferred curry or strawberries. Kazumichi turned back in confusion as Ichigo held something in her hand, catching him completely off guard with the strange question. Ichigo cornered Kazumichi with a brutal choice between Karen and herself, and the words stole his breath. Blindsided, Kazumichi admitted he still couldn't choose, while Ichigo watched him unravel. Then Ichigo startled him with a sudden move so unexpected that he froze. When she told him to take care, Kazumichi realized she had slipped him strawberry candy, and that tiny act hit harder than it should have. By the next morning, the tension followed him straight to school. Suzu cheerfully greeted Anishi-kun, and the unusual brightness in her voice turned heads at once. Karen answered politely while Kazumichi stood beside them and replied in a stiff, uneasy tone. Suzu noticed the candy in Kazumichi's mouth, and Karen pointed out that he had been quietly keeping it there since morning. Suzu said she understood because she liked candy too, teasing him as she tried to edge a little closer. Then Karen's expression changed as she brought up Ichigo's brother, and Kazumichi right away went rigid. Karen shyly admitted it was embarrassing that Enishi had seen her at the hospital, while Suzu bluntly asked if the man with her had been her boyfriend. Karen calmly said he was not her boyfriend, but someone her grandfather knew, then added that he was apparently meant to become her fiancé because arranged marriages were normal in her family. Suzu quickly pressed further and asked whether Karen liked someone else. Karen answered that the most important person to her was Suzu, and Suzu instantly complained that hearing that did not make her happy at all. Still not letting go, Suzu asked what kind of man Karen's future fiancé was. Karen said he was mature and attractive and that she might even come to care for him, sounding far more accepting than before. Kazumichi finally tried to protest, but that alone exposed how badly her answer had shaken him. Suzu forced out a smile and said she was happy for Karen, then even asked to meet the man someday, while Kazumichi stood there crushed. Watching both of them, Karen started to wonder how long they planned to keep this up. Kazumichi faltered again, but Karen firmly said that if they intended to do something, they should leave her out of it because she knew nothing. Kazumichi realized Raimu already had another woman, was using the hospital for shady research, and was still targeting Karen. While Karen quietly ate her candy, Kazumichi began wondering if he could somehow draw her to his side. Then his thoughts slipped further, and he considered whether he could make Karen cancel the engagement herself. Kazumichi convinced himself that if he could sway Karen, he could stop the marriage and crush Reimu's plan to exploit manipulative influence through the hospital. But the flaw hit right away, because getting an emotionally vulnerable Karen alone somewhere hidden was impossible. That thought stopped him cold, and he began to question whether using someone's feelings for his own goal was simply wrong. He admitted to himself that what he really wanted was for Karen to care about him without any unnatural influence. Before he could think any deeper, Karen all of a sudden called to Anishi-kun and made him jolt. Stepping a little closer, Karen returned to their earlier topic, and Kazumichi answered with obvious nerves. Karen then shyly asked whether he could stop telling other people about her fiancé. Karen complained that Enishi Kazumichi had told Suzu without permission, while Suzu defended herself by saying she had only planned to bring it up later anyway. Karen shyly explained that the word fiancé carried a bad image these days, then asked Kazumichi to promise he would not spread it around. Wanting even a little more time with her, Kazumichi asked if they could talk after class, but Karen apologized and said the next 2 weeks were packed with classes and activities. Kazumichi noted how busy she was, then awkwardly added that he too was starting training to become a husband. Karen admitted that her fiancé was much older than she was, and said she had to work hard so he would stop seeing her as just a child. Mio Sakurazawa all of a sudden appeared and asked Karen if she had been talking with Enishi. Karen told Suzu to keep her fiancé secret too, then explained that Kazumichi had only asked because he was worried about her. Suzu informed them that the class representative had ordered everyone to stay after school to decide sports festival roles, and Kazumichi realized he would have to cancel the pickup waiting for him. As the girls discussed relay and chorus assignments and pushed Suzu and Karen to join, Kazumichi tried to call out but was ignored. Watching Karen beside Himakawa's sister, Kazumichi anxiously wondered if Yumasaki-san might really like Himakawa Raimu's brother after all. Kazumichi looked up at the sky and told himself that Karen was not the kind of girl who would be swayed by cheap rumors or shallow gossip. As the meeting finally ended, a classmate told everyone to keep practicing with this arrangement until the day of the sports festival. The students quickly scattered, saying goodbye and complaining that the delay had dragged on too long because their upperclassmen would be angry if they were late. Left alone at his desk, Kazumichi realized the festival was next month, and the bridge holiday was approaching, which meant even more after-school prep. So he thought he should leave before his condition wore off. Nearby, a girl asked someone to erase the board if the notes were being submitted to the student council. As one classmate thanked Karen, Kazumichi noticed that Yumasaki-san had also remained behind in the classroom. Kazumichi grew flustered and worried that if Karen thought he had been watching her again, everything would only get more awkward, so he decided to leave. Even as he headed toward the stairs, he admitted to himself that he was dragging out the trip home on purpose. A memory of Himakawa Ichigo getting too close all of a sudden flashed through his mind, and he tried to dismiss it as embarrassing even while it rattled him. The memory sent him into a panic, but then he remembered his home was only 15 minutes away on foot and realized he still had time before he needed to return. As Kazumichi hesitated on the stairs, Yumasaki-san all of a sudden called out to ask if Enishi-kun was okay, and he froze. Shaken that this was happening right then, Kazumichi lost his footing the instant he recognized Yumasaki-san. Yumasaki-san tried to warn him to be careful, but Kazumichi tumbled down the stairs before she could stop him. He crashed hard, and Yumasaki-san ended up falling directly on top of him. Flustered by how close they were, Kazumichi hurriedly asked if she was hurt. As she hovered over him, Kazumichi panicked that speaking this close might expose her to his condition, and wondered if it had already affected her. He nervously searched Yumasaki-san's face for any sign something had changed while she remained pressed against him. Then Yumasaki-san leaned in with a dazed flush and told Inishi-kun that he seemed strange but hard to ignore, leaving him stunned. She held onto him tightly, and Kazumichi could only sit there in shock as his heart pounded. With an unfocused gaze, Yumasaki-san moved even closer and spoke in a distracted voice, making Kazumichi realize the effect had fully taken hold. Yumasaki-san pressed in again, and Kazumichi panicked as he realized the situation was getting worse. Seeing how exposed they were in the stairwell, Kazumichi feared someone would find them and Yumasaki-san's image would be destroyed. He quickly pulled Yumasaki-san away and rushed her toward somewhere safer while she followed in a daze. Kazumichi brought her into the equipment room and hid them from view. When his phone rang with a call from home, he ignored it and focused on getting Himekawa-san to come to school, because Yumasaki-san being seen like this after what happened with Suzu-chan would be far too suspicious. Holding his phone, Yumasaki-san quietly told Inishi-kun that what he was doing was not okay, though her altered expression only confused him more. She then made it clear that she would not let anyone interrupt until she got answers, and the pressure on Kazumichi tightened at once. When Kazumichi looked into her eyes, he was shaken because her entire aura felt completely different from usual. He realized that even if chance had started this, without the charm he never would have had any opening with her at all. Desperate to use the moment before it vanished, Kazumichi offered Yumasaki-san his help if she would grant his request, hoping to persuade her to call off the engagement. Yumasaki-san eagerly asked if Kazumichi truly meant it, and all of a sudden his reckless offer felt terrifyingly real. The moment she understood he was serious, Yumasaki-san grew even more agitated and began acting without restraint, driving Kazumichi into deeper panic. Kazumichi froze in stunned disbelief as her reaction went far beyond anything he had imagined. Yumasaki-san pointed out that if a proper girl was found alone like this with Inishi-kun, everyone would blame him, and the pressure instantly crushed what little confidence he had. Kazumichi could only shakily wonder whether she really meant him, drowning in fear and confusion. With a faint laugh, Yumasaki-san said she liked how unsettled he looked and wanted to see more, leaving Kazumichi completely cornered. As she kept control of the situation, Kazumichi screamed inwardly over how everything had spiraled into this nightmare. Dropping to his knees in shock, he could only wonder how he had ended up trapped in something this impossible. Yumasaki-san then told Inishi-kun to straighten up too so it would be fair, spiking the tension again and making him recoil. When Kazumichi protested that this had nothing to do with saliva, Yumasaki-san insisted the tension in the room was making everything worse, making it clear she had no intention of backing down. Moving close to Aneshi Kazumichi, Yumasaki-san said the air already felt strange, and he broke into a nervous sweat. Yumasaki-san then bluntly asked what kind of girl he liked, pushing him into even deeper embarrassment. Panicking, Kazumichi insisted that his feelings were not about that and that she herself was the reason, exposing his flustered sincerity. Just then, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed from the stairs and shattered the moment. Kazumichi jolted as he realized someone was getting closer. Yumasaki-san urgently warned that the patrol was coming their way and told him they had to move fast. The two quickly hid together in a nearby space, and Kazumichi clung to absolute stillness while Yumasaki-san covered her mouth to stay quiet. Once inside, Yumasaki-san realized they had left behind their things and her phone, and the mistake instantly raised the stakes. Her phone all of a sudden lit up and began rattling loudly, making the silence feel fatal. As a slippered foot stepped near their hiding place, Kazumichi panicked and reached out, desperate to stop the noise before they were found. As the phone kept rattling nearby, Kazumichi lunged in panic and ended up crashing down on top of Yumasaki-san inside their hiding place. Kazumichi sweated in despair as he realized there was no believable way to explain any of this anymore. Then the door all of a sudden opened, and both of them froze at the terrifying sign that someone had arrived. Himekawa Ichigo stepped in and right away spotted them with a calm but piercing stare. Before Kazumichi could react, Ichigo all of a sudden closed the distance and moved near his face, stunning him into silence. Ichigo explained that since he had taken so long to come back, Suzu had asked her to come to the school. She then showed Kazumichi the phone and said she had found it, and he instantly realized Suzu had been the one calling. Looking at him steadily, Ichigo instructed Kazumichi to handle Yumasaki-san's condition, making his whole body tense. Kazumichi stared at Yumasaki-san in shock and panic, overwhelmed by what Ichigo was asking him to do. As he hesitated, Kazumichi reflected that Yumasaki-san had always seemed like an unreachable flower, far beyond someone like him. Overwhelmed by Ichigo's command and the pressure closing in, Yumisaki-san leaned forward and urged Anishi Kazumichi to hurry, insisting she wanted this over with. Kazumichi did what Ichigo had demanded, and the air changed in an instant. The moment it happened, Kazumichi's eyes shot open as the weight of what he had done crashed down on him. Yumisaki-san all of a sudden came back to herself, let out a shocked cry, and Kazumichi rushed to apologize as both of them recoiled in confusion. Left there in stunned humiliation, Yumisaki-san broke down, unable to understand how something like this could have happened to her. Himekawa Ichigo asked if she was Yumasaki Karen, and after hearing about her connection to Yumasaki Hospital, said Karen likely knew something about the strange condition because her brother had been researching it. Still shaken, Yumasaki-san asked if Ichigo meant Himekawa Raimu, admitting she had only heard the term strange condition before. Ichigo explained that Yumasaki-san had been affected by contact with someone carrying the rare condition, causing her judgment to be distorted, and warned that the power was dangerous because her brother intended to use it for his own ends. As the explanation sank in, Yumasaki-san fixated on what Ichigo had said and finally understood why this had happened to her. Ichigo cut it off there, said she had already revealed too much, asked them not to tell Raimu she was there or that she had the same condition too, and insisted the incident had truly been an accident. Kazumichi apologized to Yumasaki-san, promised he would stop going near her starting tomorrow, and suggested they go meet Suzu. Yumasaki-san watched him leave with a burning, shaken face, and as he parted from Karen, he quietly told her to take care. Once they were alone, Yumasaki-san asked Suzu whether she had already known about Anishi-kun's condition, and Suzu admitted it had only appeared 3 days earlier. Suzu told Yumasaki-san that if he made her uncomfortable, she should report him the moment he came into view from the next day on. But Yumasaki-san insisted she was fine. Kazumichi feared Karen probably hated him now and would report him, but Suzu said that if Karen did, she would stand up for him. During the ride, Yumasaki-san kept everything buried inside, telling herself not to question what had already happened and to focus on avoiding any more shame. Even so, Yumasaki-san admitted deep down that despite her strict upbringing, she had always wanted the upper hand over men. Then a dangerous thought crossed her mind, that if she had Anishi-kun's help, she might finally be honest about what she truly felt, before forcing herself to stop because she knew it would be dangerous for both of them. But even then, Yumasaki-san still found herself wanting that connection one more time. As night fell over the house, that forbidden thought still refused to let her go. Kazumichi collapsed onto the sofa at home, breathing hard as Yumasaki-san's shaken expression kept replaying in his mind. He remembered Yumasaki-san insisting she was fine, but the more he replayed it, the more he feared she had only been hiding how badly the incident had hurt her. Kazumichi sank deeper into guilt and convinced himself that after the accident and his humiliating words, Yumasaki-san's feelings toward him had dropped from bad to irreparable. As he compared her reaction to the others affected by his condition, he grew uneasy over how different Yumasaki-san had seemed under its influence. Then Ichigo called out to Kazumichi after finishing her bath, snapping him out of the spiral. Ichigo appeared in a new outfit and shyly asked Kazumichi how she looked. When Kazumichi panicked over why she was dressed up, Ichigo explained that Suzu had picked clothes that matched his preferences. Ichigo admitted she suspected Suzu had already seen through her plan, while also noting that Kazumichi was easy to read. She sat down close beside him and revealed that she had heard his ideal type was someone like Karen Yumasaki. Blushing with nervous resolve, Ichigo asked whether she could become someone he would admire instead. Kazumichi panicked at Ichigo's outfit, but Ichigo sharply told him that dressing to his taste did not mean she was trying to win him over, and called it unfair for him to react that way when she was only trying to comfort someone heartbroken. Keeping her gaze turned away, Ichigo clarified that she was not saying she wanted to go out with him or anything like that, leaving Kazumichi even more lost. Ichigo explained that people with their strange condition often misused it to manipulate those they liked, and stressed that this was a common moral failure even if his recent accident had not been intentional. Looking down with unusual seriousness, Ichigo said she did not want Kazumichi to use that power with bad intentions. She then admitted she had hoped that if he felt satisfied simply spending time with the girl, he might stop feeling the urge to use that power on anyone. Kazumichi was stunned, then confessed that while what happened this time had truly been an accident, he had wanted to sway Yumasaki-san so he could break off her engagement. The weight of his own words hit him at once, and he realized that kind of thinking would make him no different from Yumasaki-san's brother using the same power for his own ends. Overcome with shame, Kazumichi apologized and swore he would never use his condition for his own personal gain again. Ichigo quietly accepted his promise, her expression softening with relief. Kazumichi flailed and insisted that Ichigo looked unbelievably cute, then blurted out that she had not needed to try so hard just to make him like her. Kazumichi hurriedly said that if Ichigo forced him into one choice, he would only feel cornered, and admitted that would be wrong too. Ichigo quietly agreed, accepting his feelings without pushing him any further. Trying to flee the tension, Kazumichi abruptly said he would go take a bath, while Ichigo calmly decided she would change into her pajamas first. Time passed in a heavy silence as the mood slowly shifted. Sitting by the stairs, Ichigo asked whether they could save Kazumichi and Suzu's contacts, and Kazumichi said he would let her know if he ended up running late. Kazumichi checked the phone and eagerly agreed to try. As he held the phone, Ichigo leaned in extremely close to look with him, and Kazumichi froze while she bluntly noted that they were too close. Ichigo pressed right beside him to see the screen, leaving Kazumichi completely flustered as he struggled to keep the phone steady. While leaning over him, Ichigo told Kazumichi that she could not focus because the camera would not stop shaking, pushing his panic even further. Outside, the quiet school building framed the end of their tense, awkward moment. At school, Kazumichi spotted Yumasaki-san ahead of him, but Ichigo all of a sudden turned toward him and stole his attention first. Ichigo greeted Anishi-kun with a bright smile, acting so naturally that it threw Kazumichi off balance at once. Kazumichi panicked as he realized she was acting as if nothing unusual had happened the day before. Ichigo moved close to his side and calmly said she wanted him to tell her more about that strange condition. She then asked if the two of them could talk alone on Sunday, making the request sound personal and serious. Kazumichi was left completely stunned by the sudden invitation. Ichigo slipped him her phone number and told him she would contact him again, leaving him even more shaken. As Ichigo walked away, Kazumichi stood there in silence, still trying to process what had just happened. Staring at the number in his hand, he wondered why she wanted it to be just the two of them, and whether this was a date or a warning instead. The mixed signals overwhelmed him, and he could not tell whether he should feel excited or afraid about what was coming next. Kazumichi remembered that he had promised to meet Karen Yumasaki alone on Sunday, and the thought instantly tightened the pressure around him. While staring at his phone, Kazumichi nervously wondered if it might be a date, but quickly convinced himself that after everything that had happened, Karen was more likely to be furious with him. Seeing Karen Yumasaki on his screen, he grew even more anxious and wondered whether her strange condition had truly faded on its own. On Saturday, Kazumichi thanked Suzu-chan for helping him pick out clothes, trying to prepare himself for the meeting ahead. Suzu-chan admitted she was surprised by his sudden request, while Kazumichi bowed and asked her to help him choose an outfit good enough to apologize in, even showing her his limited budget. When Suzu-chan warned that showing up in cheap clothes while dramatically begging would only embarrass Karen, Kazumichi insisted he had no intention of going that far. Suzu-chan bluntly told him that even his current clothes looked better than the ridiculous things he usually wore, and Kazumichi hesitantly asked if she really meant that. As old panic flashed through his mind, Kazumichi remembered his determination to tell Karen that everything had been his fault. Still uneasy, Kazumichi turned to Suzu-chan and asked if he could ask her something important, and she pressed him to say it. With Suzu-chan and another girl listening, Kazumichi asked what it actually felt like to be under the influence, hoping to understand Karen's condition before Sunday. Suzu-chan all of a sudden blushed and snapped in shock, then quickly tried to regain her composure. The other girl quietly warned that this was not a good place to discuss that topic, while Suzu-chan remained visibly flustered. The girl suggested they move the conversation to her room and added that it was clean now, which left Kazumichi stunned. When Kazumichi saw the room, he was hit by the sight of the mess she had tried to downplay. She turned on music so Hanakawa-san would not overhear, and Kazumichi noticed she seemed used to hiding things from the hallway. As soon as they sat down side by side, Kazumichi panicked over the sudden closeness while Suzu-chan stayed stern and serious. The awkward distance made Kazumichi wonder if Suzu-chan truly did not see him as a man at all. Trying to stay focused, Kazumichi said he wanted to ask the most important question one more time. He bluntly asked why people started acting so recklessly after falling under the influence, and Suzu-chan exploded at how absurdly direct the question was. Suzu-chan admitted she barely remembered doing it, but said the urge tied to his condition had felt like the most important thing in the world to her, more important than anything money could buy. Suzu-chan fired back that she obviously had confidence in herself because she worked hard to maintain it, and her blunt pride caught Kazumichi off guard. She scolded him for blaming his height when, in her view, no girl would reject him without reason, and insisted his real problem was his lack of confidence in his looks and abilities, leaving him crushed. Still reeling from that attack, Kazumichi nervously asked whether people under the influence remained aware of themselves at all. Suzu-chan admitted they were aware to some extent, but said it felt more like being driven by pure instinct, as if reason simply vanished. When Kazumichi compared that state to being out of control, Suzu-chan snapped and demanded that he stop saying things like that to a girl and drop the subject. Her reaction made Kazumichi wonder if saying people spoke their true feelings under the influence might have struck something important. As he looked at Suzu-chan, he realized she genuinely cared about the parts of him she believed were uniquely his, and that realization hit him hard. Even so, Kazumichi decided there was still one thing he truly needed to know. He asked Suzu-chan whether it had disgusted her to be affected by someone she did not even like, and the question made the room go tight with tension. Suzu-chan instantly shut him down again and told him in no uncertain terms to drop it. Suzu-chan abruptly apologized and lost her balance, crashing into Kazumichi before either of them could react. Kazumichi ended up sprawled over Suzu-chan on the bed, and both of them froze in shock at how close they all of a sudden were. Startled and flustered, Kazumichi right away asked if Suzu-chan was all right. Kazumichi nervously admitted that even if it had been because of the condition, the moment had somehow felt more meaningful to him than he expected. With teary eyes, Suzu-chan quietly revealed that was exactly why she had not hated it either. Kazumichi was shaken as he realized he was honestly relieved that Suzu-chan had been the first person caught up in this with him after his condition awakened. As his thoughts spiraled, he panicked that what he had just implied sounded dangerously close to a confession, while inwardly admitting he did not hate the idea at all. Face to face with Suzu-chan's steady gaze, Kazumichi tried to speak but could barely force the words out. Before he could continue, a sudden sneeze shattered the moment and jolted them both. The interruption instantly triggered Suzu-chan's condition again, and she grabbed onto Kazumichi in distress while pleading with him as he recoiled in alarm. A woman cleaning the stairs rushed to report that Himekawa-san had put on the neutralization outfit. At the hospital, someone stayed up deep into the night, combing through records on a keyboard. As the search narrowed, his attention locked onto Anishi Kazumichi, and he could not shake the question of why Ichigo had chosen him. He found almost nothing on Kazumichi beyond a hospitalization after a traffic accident, but Ichigo had been admitted to that same hospital at the time. Then another file surfaced with an 821 entry stating that, at her mother's request, a substitute had been hospitalized under the maiden name Nogawa, and the identity had been verified twice. The instant it clicked, he realized who it was, and the shock left him staring in disbelief.